Hey, what up everybody? This is Stevie Breach coming to you with the November 17th edition of Monday Night Raw. Got home from work and was starting to check this show out. Honestly, it started out and it's very monotonous, sort of, I don't know, Triple H and Stephanie, the Authority, coming down and delivering the long, drawn-out promo. I think, honestly, that I've gotten to the point where I know that this promo is coming. You basically know that Monday Night Raw is never going to start off with a match. It's always going to start out with some sort of a long segment of just talking, and you always hope that something from that talking is going to end up being some sort of a big match or something that really matters in the long scheme of life to the WWE, but honestly, it never really does. You know, Triple H and Stephanie, they had Luke Harper inside of the ring, so that was the first time that we got to see Luke Harper, who I guess was actually a part of the Authority. He's not just sort of going to be a Bray Wyatt follower on the side and sort of letting Bray run a singles feud and then, reuniting the group for the long run. They are really putting Luke Harper into the Authority. It's pretty surprising to me that they didn't really change any of his attire. They're just keeping Luke Harper as Luke Harper. He's just sort of this whacked out psycho dude that hangs out with the Authority, which is a little bit weird because when Seth Rollins made his jump from the Shield to joining the Authority or Evolution, whatever you wanted to say it was at that time, basically, he kept the Shield attire for a week or maybe even 2 weeks because I think that, basically it was a last minute decision to put him into this group and basically have him be the guy who made the turn, that they hadn't really started working on outside outfits. And then once they finally did it, they basically gave the guy a complete makeover from, coming out in the SWAT team attire. Now he's coming down and he's wrestling inside of the, sort of like, I guess you can say Batman suit is the one thing that a lot of people call it. Out there on the internet, but I guess keeping him the way he is what they want to do for at the point. I liked the point that Triple H made, basically saying, that WCW is ran by the inmates, and look what that company is now. That it's extinct, it's gone, it's over, it's owned by the WWE. You can watch it on the WWE network, but it's never going to have a chance to be what it once was, and what it could have been if they actually had somebody steering the ship and pointing them in the right direction instead of having basically Hogan, Hall, and Nash being the guys that steered the ship. I apologize for their creative control clause. And basically never really let anything that the writers were trying to push through get done at the end of the day. But basically, once that was all done and settled out, basically they were going to do basically what Survivor Series always does for, the last Monday Night Raw. They just sort of, to hype up the show, they just sort of had one guy from one team go up against another guy from the other team, and it ended up being Dolph Ziggler going up against Luke Harper, two guys that don't really have a whole bunch of history behind this, and, as they announced that this was going to be the match, there's really no hype to it or anything like that. It just seemed like it was going to be one of those non-title matches. Maybe you can see Luke Harper get a win over Dolph Ziggler, and it's a big surprise, and maybe we start taking Luke Harper a little bit more serious, because I'm sure there's a lot of people out there who don't really see why the hell he would get a shot on Team Authority when he just was sort of a lackey in the background of a group that has a nice clothesline and maybe a good, big boot. But, if he was never able to win the tag team championships in that weak tag team division they got, what are they really going to do with him as a singles guy, getting me up the ranks? But, as they were announcing the match, Lillian Garcia, out of the middle of nowhere, announced that this was an Intercontinental Championship match, a fact that, could tell Dolph Ziggler was not aware of that was going to be, and at that point, Joey Mercury and Jamie Noble jumped in the ring along with Seth Rollins and put the beat down on top of Ziggler, with Seth Rollins nailing Ziggler with the briefcase, where it didn't knock him out to the point where he was out cold. Basically, there was a fight inside of the ring, but basically, besides for the attack, basically it was Luke Harper winning clean. He is the new Intercontinental Champion, which definitely tells you that it is a little bit weird. I would be very surprised if they don't do some sort of a corporate makeover on Luke Harper. It just doesn't really make sense to me how you get all these clean-cut dudes. Like Kane is a part of the group, and he's corporate Kane. He wears slacks, he wears the wife beater. If he's not in the ring, he's wearing like a suit jacket, and he's the chief of operations, or whatever the heck they call him. chief of public relations. I'm not sure what he is. But if Kane has to do it, why wouldn't Luke Harper do it? Sort of pointing them in a different direction of getting down. But this was the first big loss for Ziggler and Team Cena. Ziggler had a good Intercontinental Championship run. I think honestly it's still a belt that nobody really cares about. But I don't really even know if this belt ever really going to matter again. I mean, it was the only title that's been on television. That's been used. The United States Championship, had a big switch between Rusev and Sheamus a few weeks ago. I don't know. Changing the belt on Monday Night Raw in a match that wasn't even announced doesn't really sound like it gives it a whole bunch of credibility in my mind. But I'm sure Ziggler will get the belt back before long. I don't really... You know who I think of when I think of Luke Harper as being the Intercontinental Champion? Is during the invasion angle, it was they put the Intercontinental Championship on Albert. Prince Albert, the dude that was an X Factor. I loved X Factor. Just Incredible, X-Pac. I wasn't the biggest Albert fan, but I think he beat Kane for the Intercontinental Championship. Was a little bit weird. Rikishi as an Intercontinental Champion was another guy that was a little bit weird having that championship. That to me has always been a belt that was a big stepping stone. I still go back and I think about, Bret Hart, Mr. Perfect, those guys that, they were here and then they got the belt and it took them higher up on the card. And I think Ziggler's been World Heavyweight Champion twice if you count that SmackDown one where Vicky gave him the belt over Edge and he held it for 5 minutes and he left. Once on his own if you count the time when he cashed in on Alberto Del Rio after WrestleMania 29. But I think everybody wants to see him climb that mountain again, and we're going to have to see how it gets done. But then again, when you have only one World Heavyweight Champion, and that's Brock Lesnar, and he hasn't been on the show in months, it's hard to climb to the top of the mountain when there's nobody really up there. But that's my own deal. I think that is going to end sooner than later. I wouldn't be surprised if they bring him in for the December change, or maybe even January. So it's coming up soon that Brock's going to lose that belt. So we'll see what happens there. But I'll keep watching Raw. Just really big surprising in the second segment of the night was Harper winning the Intercontinental Championship from Dolph Ziggler.